A leaked version of a US national security strategy has sparked controversy on both sides of the Atlantic, with claims that Washington could seek to reshape the future of the European Union by working with specific member states and weakening EU unity. The document, described as a fuller, unpublished version of the Trump administration's 2025 national security strategy, includes a chapter titled "Make Europe Great Again." According to media reports, it suggests that the United States should deepen its ties with 4 EU countries. That's Poland, Austria, Italy, and Hungary. In the strategy, Washington is said to want to pull away from the European Union, effectively weakening the political cohesion of the bloc, while strengthening bilateral relationships with governments that are seen as ideologically aligned. The leaked content goes beyond normal diplomatic engagement. It repeatedly calls for the US to support political parties, cultural groups, and movements within these nations that advocate for national sovereignty and traditional values, as long as they remain pro-American. That approach marks a striking departure from decades of US foreign policy, which generally positioned the European Union as a key partner and pillar of the transatlantic alliance. Critics of the strategy argue that it amounts to political interference in European affairs. European leaders and diplomats have described the leaked document as a political war against the EU, accusing the US of favouring fragmentation over unity and attempting to influence domestic politics across the continent. European Council President Antonio Costa cautioned Washington against interference. "Allies must act as allies," he wrote on the social platform X. "What we cannot accept is interference in Europe's democratic life." Former EU policy chief Josep Borrell said the strategy amounted to a declaration of political war, arguing that Trump wants a Europe divided into nations subordinate to his demands and voting preferences. European leaders, he said, must treat Trump as an adversary and reinforce the EU's autonomy in technology, security, and foreign policy. The controversy comes amid broader unease about US-EU relations. Earlier in December, the publicly released National Security Strategy drew attention for harsh language about Europe's future, warning of civilizational erasure, and questioning the reliability of some NATO allies if current trends continue. That more public version criticised EU migration policies and regulatory approaches, whilst emphasising America's interest in supporting nations willing to restore their former greatness. Deputy Assistant to President Trump and Director for Counterterrorism Sebastian Gawker joined Nigel Farage on GB News to discuss the strong words in the National Security Strategy.
Why is Donald Trump, why are America so concerned about what's happening in Europe, although he did single out Poland and Hungary, of course, from which your family come from, as doing a good job? Why does America care about what's happening in society across Britain and Europe?
Because everyone should. I feel rather strange. It's to be interviewed by the man who has fought so valiantly for the rebirth of Europe in terms of nation states and sovereignty. Without you, Nigel, there is no Brexit. Without you, Nigel, this whole rebirth of national sovereignty on the continent wouldn't really have happened. So God bless you, Nigel. You know exactly why. The president, even this document that we just released on Friday that sets the scene for America for the next 3 or more years is very clear. We have a connection to the continent. The president has familial roots to the UK and to the continent, and we are concerned for civilizational reasons. Western civilization is the greatest civilization the world has ever seen, and it is experiencing a rebirth in America under MAGA, under Make America First Again. But what's happening in Europe, with your exception, as you mentioned, what the president listed in certain countries who get it, like Poland or Hungary, but elsewhere, whether it's illegal migration not taken seriously, whether it's the population decline and the lack of a capacity to meet 2.1 birth replacement rates, or whether it's the insane political correctness that puts people in prison for tweets and Facebook posts. Nigel, you know better than anyone why we here in America are concerned for our shared civilization.
Seb, I know it all too well, but I wanted to hear it from you. Now, the one other part of this that is leading to big debate, and this has been going on ever since 2016, November 16, since Trump first got elected, is the narrative here has been Trump wants to walk away from NATO and say, the hell with what's going on in Europe. And people look at this document and say, well, you know, it's perhaps a bit kinder to Russia than it ought to be. I've always taken the view that actually of many of the senior Republicans, Trump was the one that cared most about American leadership and NATO. But I mean, is America, well, firstly, about to walk away from NATO? And secondly, is an American negotiated peace in Ukraine now for the birds?
So, look, let's be very clear here. I cut my teeth on NATO issues back in the early 1990s. Back then, we suffered as an alliance from the free rider complex. America paid the bills for practically everyone. We dreamt of nations meeting 2% of GDP committed to their defense. So we could actually have an Article 5 that meant something, where there would be expeditionary forces, capable forces amongst all the NATO nations, not just those with a storied history of great military successes like the UK, France, or others. But what happened? Disaster. The people thinking that they can choose the welfare state and buy butter, whilst the US would buy the guns and protect you all. So no, what the president achieved just this year, that we see 5% dedication of GDP to defense inside NATO nations, is because he cares, is because he wants Europe to be as strong as we are, or get close to the same category. And when it comes to the future of Europe, who was it who in the UN 6 years ago, when he gave a speech, told the Europeans, stop buying Russian petrol and gas? Do you remember that moment, Nigel, when the president warned Europe? The camera panned to the German delegation, who were tittering, who were laughing. The American president says we rely too much on Russian gas. Well, they're not tittering anymore, are they, Nigel?
European leaders have again reacted strongly. Some see the leaked strategy as confirmation of a worrying shift in US priorities, from collective transatlantic cooperation to transactional relationships with select countries. Others argue that Europe must strengthen its own strategic autonomy, particularly in defence and foreign policy, rather than depending on Washington's support amid competing global interests. The implication that the US may favour backing nationalist or sovereignty-focused movements within key EU states has fueled debate over the future of the transatlantic cooperation, the role of the EU in global affairs, and the stability of Western alliances forged after World War II. Questions also remain about how much of the leaked material reflects actual policy intentions, as the White House has denied the existence of a separate private strategy document. Whether this leaked strategy signals a clear shift in US foreign policy or simply highlights tensions within the transatlantic relationship, it has already triggered debate in capitals across Europe and Washington alike. As alliances are tested and geopolitical competition sharpens, the future of Europe's unity and its relationship with the United States remains firmly in the spotlight. Stay tuned to GB News for more developments on this story as it unfolds.